Hey, hey. Tobago updates. Good morning, Tobago.
Good morning, and welcome back to Good Morning Tobago right here on Tobago Updates. As I promised you guys, we'll be back with so much more. And this morning, we're talking about fire prevention on the island of Tobago. And we are having this conversation with no other than Officer Jude Rogers, who is a fire prevention officer at the Trinidad and Tobago Fire Service. Good morning, Mr. Rogers. Good morning.
Good morning to you and good morning to your listeners. Are you hearing me loud and clear?
Yes, we can. And how are you doing?
We're great this morning and we have a great message to the nation this morning. We really want people to be aware of the dangers that still exist when it comes to fire prevention in this particular season. As you know, we're still in the dry season, which ends on June the 30th of this year. And so we still have quite a bit that is coming up before us, and we want persons to be aware. Just recently, here in Trinidad, we would have had a number of fires over the weekend where persons would have lost their homes as a result to fires that were also supported by bushfires. So not because we're seeing rain falling, that means the danger has been totally averted. So we want members of the public to be very much aware of that and to continue with their drive for cleaning up of their homes around their property, in the eve of their property, in the guttering of your property, and also keeping that vegetation off your fence line. So it's very important that we maintain that during this period as it is still very much in the bushfire season.
So that has been a common start of most of the fires that we saw over the weekend in Trinidad.
Well, some of them would have been caused as a result of negligence, others because of arson, but definitely the contributing factor, especially when one house is very close to the next. As you know, the saying says, when your neighbor house is on fire, you need to
What's
wet
yours?
yours. And that is exactly a case that is taking place because one house in particular was very close to another property, and as a result of the fire on the adjacent property and the bush that was between the both properties, we had one property be catching a fire as a result of that. Of course, fire officers responded well to that with the resources that they had and were able to avert danger to the houses that were adjacent to those two houses. But again, it's very sad, and we take no joy, no pleasure in the fact that persons still losing their homes to fires in 2023 when we believe that such an occurrence is very avoidable in this modern age that we have here today.
Seen any fires, house fires in Tobago since the beginning of 2023? How many, if
In
so?
terms of house fires in Tobago, I would really have to look at the stats more closely. But I do know that across the board, in terms of bushfires, the severity of bushfire in Tobago is much less than that of Trinidad, but nonetheless, it is still an issue. And so, members of the public who reside in Tobago, and we have quite a few households in Tobago and businesses in Tobago, and we have lovely flora and fauna. And we have such a beautiful rainforest, the main ridge, and all of those places. We asking farmers, even if you have to burn, even if you have to clear lands, please do so by applying to the fire service for your fire permit, and do so with the restrictions that will be given to you or the guidelines that would have been given to you by the fire service. And so you can reach out to the nearest fire station, the Roxborough Fire Station, the Scarborough Fire Station, and you can access from those fire stations the fire guardians who will visit your property, and they would advise you on what are the measures to be taken and also issue you a permit. And the permit is only $10. But we're saying if you don't burn with the use of the permit, you're doing something that's illegal, and there's a fine of $20,000 and imprisonment for 6 months. And we don't want that to happen to any member of the public.
Officer Rogers, you have advocated strongly for individuals using tools and devices in their own home to detect fires. Tell us why it's so important now more than ever for persons to invest in early detection equipment in their homes, as well as fire extinguishers.
It's a very excellent question. And the fact of the matter is this: fire has a specific timeline with which it moves from the very early stage to the mature or the decay stage. That period is just about 3 minutes. So I want you to think about the proximity of your home in relation to the nearest fire station, and the fact that you can move from a very small fire to a very involved fire within only 3 minutes. It means, therefore, that as members of the public, if we don't have early detection, it means that you can be trapped in your homes because you're unaware of the fire. Not only that, when you are made aware of the fire by the smoke detectors, which I'm advocating for to be placed in every room, you still need an extinguishing medium, not a bucket of water. It is not sufficient, and it definitely is not the best method to fight a fire. You need to have a 10 pound dry chemical fire extinguisher, dry chemical powder, or what we call an ABC fire extinguisher. It is highly effective, and it handles the majority of types of materials that you'll find in a modern home. So I'm advocating, members of the public, heed the warning. The best device that you can get to protect you is a smoke detector in each of your bedrooms and a 10-pound dry chemical fire extinguisher. I want to tell the public it is very inexpensive to put this measure in place, but once you do that, you give yourself the best opportunity of early warning and also eradicating a fire in the case in your instance.
Right, and there is a difference, a significant difference between a smoke detector and is it a heat detector or a fire detector? They call that one.
All right,
And
so
what
there's
and
a
how should one strategically place them around their homes? Because you said putting a smoke detector in every room.
yeah,
So
that
explain to us what is the strategy when buying smoke detectors? Should we look to get a smoke detector in every single room, or should we strategically place them maybe in the hallway, maybe in the living room, in the kitchen? Where do we put smoke detectors as opposed to heat detectors? Because in the
excellent.
kitchen, we are accustomed to that smoke.
Yes.
Every time you cook a particular meal, there's smoke. Sometimes the smoke detector goes off. So help us to understand the strategy behind investing in the equipment for our homes.
Again, another very excellent question. And so the rule of thumb is that we place detectors where the sleeping risk is. So you are asleep mainly in your bedroom. So as you rightfully said, each of the bedroom would receive a smoke detector or should have a smoke detector mounted to the center of the room on the ceiling at the highermost point, and also your hallways may also, depending on the distance in your hallways, you should place a fire extinguisher in the hallways because smoke will get out of the room and into the hallways. It is a good way to detect. But definitely you do not want to place a smoke detector in your kitchen because, as you know, we cook and smoke is a natural byproduct when we cook. In some instances, when you chunky the pot, as they say, or when you're frying something, you may develop some smoke. So for that purpose, we have heat detectors. Now, you may not always get a battery operated heat detector, although they are available at some of the leading safety device stores or the stores that supply safety devices. But the best thing to do is to place them in bedrooms, in your living room, and in your corridors. And if you can purchase or if you can locate a heat detector, you should place those in your bathrooms and also in your kitchen. Those are the areas that you want to. Oh, by the way, if you have storerooms where you're storing material, you would want to also place a heat detector in your garage area if it's enclosed. You will not want to put a smoke detector there, as the carbon monoxide from your vehicle as you're idling is going to set off the smoke detector. So I hope that clears up the whole idea of where you should be placing smoke versus heat detectors in your home.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. And, a lot of persons feel like emergency evacuation procedures are for public buildings or, you know, just places where a lot of where the public usually frequents. But you have said many times in the past that even as being the head of your home or even in your home, we should establish evacuation procedures in case of an emergency. Where are we going to go? How are we going to exit the house? That type of thing. But I mean, it's also very unpredictable how fires start or where it starts in the home. So it may be a bit difficult to decide what routes to take. But how can an individual create an effective evacuation procedure for their home?
Okay, I want to also point out to you and members of the public that a fire is not the only reason that you may need to evacuate your home. If there is an earthquake, of course, you would be told to stay in place and to take cover under something that is solid, like a table, like a desk, or even under the bed until the shaking stops. But you definitely don't want to remain in your house after an earthquake has occurred. Also, if there's a gas release or if you are smelling gas in your home, you would want to ventilate by opening the windows and exiting your home without putting on any electronic device which can ignite an explosion. But the main tenets of an evacuation procedure, which everyone should practice within their home, is to understand first and foremost how many exits you have and to ensure that those exits are available to you to utilize in the event of an emergency. So you should have at least two ways in and out of your home. And we're not talking about the windows here. A front door, a back door, a side door, or front door, any combination, but you should always have two ways out of your building. Now, I know we have a lot of buildings now that has one way in and one way out, but those buildings have extra fire protection to ensure that you can actually make it through the one door that you may have. So, firstly, the tenets of an evacuation procedure are: one, when you observe the fire or you observe an emergency that requires an evacuation, you should be able to raise an alarm. To raise an alarm, you either shout out fire, fire, or whatever the emergency is, you must verbalize that loud enough so all members of your family can hear and determine that it's time to leave. Upon doing so, you should quickly dial the number 990 and give your pertinent information to the operator on the other end. Fire officers are awaiting your call in the event of an emergency. Please give them your contact number, your location, the type of emergency, some form of landmark that you may be able to identify where you are located. As we would be aware of our station ground, we know our locations, but sometimes it's a bit tricky. So you give them information that will get to your so they can get to your location very quickly. In addition to that, all of this must take place simultaneously. You should be leaving your home via the exit that is not compromised. If one exit is compromised by a fire or by the collapse of the structure, please leave through the exit that is available. If, however, both exits are not available, I am praying that members of the public know that you need to have fire escape windows where you can open the burglar proofing and you can simply jump through the window and get out to the lower onto the ground and make your way to your muster point. When you are going to your muster point, members of the public, please remember to do so in a brisk walking. You must walk briskly and not run, as running tends to create panic and you can slip, trip, and fall, and that may cause more harm than good. When you arrive at your muster point, which could be as simple as the street sign over the road or the under the street light over the road, a clear savanna, an open space where nothing can fall on you, please conduct a roll call to ensure all members of your family are at that location. So that when the first arriving officers, whether police, fire, or whoever may be arriving, first responders arrive, the ambulance, you can give them that pertinent information and let them know if someone is still trapped in the building so they can perform a rescue when necessary. So, as I repeat, raise an alarm, dial 990, giving pertinent information, continue with an evacuation simultaneously, roll call, and if and only you have a fire extinguisher, that is the only point when you are allowed to utilize the fire extinguisher, when you have made sure that your family has begun the evacuation process. I hope that this was very helpful to members of the public.
Okay, Officer Rogers. And one of the things that I really want to ask you is, I mean, some things can only be understood by demonstrations, but some things can be understood by explanation. And when it comes to the evacuation of the elderly, babies, and persons with health issues, how can persons create a strategy in a case of an evacuation, whether it be by fire or a natural disaster, to specifically focus on getting them to safety?
Great question. So, for elderly, children, and persons who are incapacitated, the planning has to begin long before an incident occurs. So, we plan with them in mind. So, for instance, if someone is bedridden, we will have to remember that we will need enough of an aisle space. We may need to create a ramp to the front door so that we can roll that person forward. We may even need to have a wheelchair available to persons such as that. Also, for children, children should be made part of your evacuation procedure. They should be guided accordingly, and we should always make a special sweep of our buildings to ensure that children are not hiding under or in cupboards or in areas, because children get scared and they get frightened, and what they do, they may tend to hide. If somebody is bedridden, again, put the necessary things in place for those persons to be evacuated by building ramps, creating aisle spaces that are very wide, and ensuring that we can wheel those persons out in the event of an emergency. And persons who are incapacitated, we should get them out first, as other persons can walk out, but persons who are bedridden, elderly, they would need the assistance of the able-bodied members of your family. So we must cater for granny, we must cater for granddad, and for the little children within our homes.
So would you advise on investing in maybe smoke masks, these type of things in the home, just in case there is a situation where, you know, you have to exit these persons, you want to put a mask over them just to ensure that, you know, you can get them to safety? Because, you know, they said that a huge number of deaths by fire are not necessarily from fire, but from the smoke that emanates from the fire. So is
Right.
that a plausible recommendation?
Right. So it all depends on the situation, but we would not necessarily recommend a smoke mask. What you're speaking about is a respirator that can actually keep the smoke out. And I mean, what you would look at, the persons who we're looking at, you would have to seek some sort of guidance from your doctor in terms of that aspect of it. Because if somebody is bedridden or ill, placing a mask on them could limit the amount of oxygen as well. So you'd want to get guidance from a certified doctor where that is concerned. From a fire perspective, from a fire office perspective, what we would want to see is the early movement before the smoke is generated. We would want to see early movement. I would also advise that if you have an elderly person, you may want that person to have a room that is on the ground floor if you have a multi-floor building. You don't want to place an elderly person on the upper floors and then you have to find a way to get them down the stairwell. So all these are little measures that we can use. But definitely, when you're heading towards having a mask, it means therefore that you're spending quite a long period of time in the building to be warranting the use of a mask. My best suggestion is early movement. You will not need to have a mask if you move very early, especially when you have a smoke detector that detects very early. There is not going to be much smoke generated in the first minute of a fire when it's detected.
Excellent. And as we wind down our conversation this morning, my final question. Now, a lot of people think that insurance is for the rich. Um, Talk to us a little bit about the investment in home and liability insurance. So, you know, so that persons can secure their investment, can secure their assets in the case of any type of emergency, not just fires, but specific to fires.
And that is a very, that's, I can tell you your questions this morning are right on point. Members of the public, I want you to understand this. When you take measures to protect your home by placing the smoke detectors, the fire extinguishers, and you bring that sort of information to the attention of your insurers, you are supposed to be able to get a reduction in the cost of your insurance. Not only that, it should be the best in the best interest of members of the public to insure your home. But not only your home, you have valuable contents that cannot be replaced. You should try to at least attach a value to the content of your property and to insure that as well. And I'm sure the many insurance companies out there would be more than willing to do so. I would also advise you, when determining the elements of construction of your home, it is best to use elements that are non-combustible, meaning materials such as metal, gypsum, concrete, and if you have to use wood, of course, you will use your early detection, because I know a lot of the homes in Tobago have wood finishing, wooden ceilings, even wooden banisters and so forth. It looks very lovely, but it's an added danger. But I'm not saying not to use it because it acts best against the sea blast. But the key thing here, early detection, and of course, when you put the measures in place, the insurance companies will in turn reduce the cost of your insurance. which augurs well for members of the public.
Excellent, and it helps us to quantify what we have as well, right?
Exactly.
So thank you so much, Officer Rogers. It's always a pleasure having this conversation with you. Always a breath of fresh air, demonstrating that the communication capacity is well alive at the Trinidad and Tobago Fire Service. Excellent job as always. Again, thank you, and we look forward to speaking to you again soon. Guys, we're going to take a quick break, and after that, we're going to be back with lots more. See you soon.
Let's go, go. It's a brand new morning.